My name is Silas, and I am an interrogator. Not in the way you might imagine, with bright lights and a sterile room, or even the shadows of some government black site. No, my theater of operations is far older, far deeper, and infinitely more unholy. I work for an organization that has no official name, no public face, certainly no entry in any database you could access. It exists beneath the veneer of the sacred, intertwined with the ancient stones of what many believe to be the spiritual heart of the world. Yet it is utterly separate, a parasitic twin dwelling in the dark. They simply call us the keepers of the unspoken, though the unspoken is often all they want to hear. And I am the one who makes them speak. They make me ask the question. The air down here is always heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth, ancient stone, and something else, something metallic and faintly putrid that clings to the back of your throat. A taste like stagnant blood mixed with ozone and the faint, unsettling sweetness of decay. It's a smell you never truly get used to, though after 17 years, it has become as familiar as my own breath, a constant companion that seeps into my clothes, my skin, and perhaps my very soul. 17 years since they found me, a boy barely out of my teens, wandering through the catacombs, drawn by a whisper only I could hear. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense, but a resonant frequency, a vibration deep within the bedrock of this hallowed yet cursed place, a subtle hum that others dismissed as mere geological stress or the echo of the wind. For me, however, it was an invitation, a silent call that bypassed my ears and went straight to the deepest, most primal parts of my soul, stirring something ancient and forgotten within my own being. It was a frequency that resonated with an innate sensitivity within me, a specific tremor in my spirit, an intrinsic connection to the unseen currents of this dark undercurrent of existence, the resonant frequency that allows me to connect. They recognized the sign, the subtle yet profound shift in my aura, the inherent susceptibility to the currents of this netherworld, and the potential for channeling. They observed me for days, a silent, hooded presence always just at the periphery of my perception, their forms blending seamlessly with the shadows cast by the colossal, roughly hewn pillars, before finally revealing themselves. There was no gentle introduction, no soft persuasion, no comforting words, only a stark choice presented with an unflinching honesty that bordered on cruelty, delivered in voices that seemed to emanate from the very stone itself, devoid of warmth or hesitation. Join them, or be lost to the whispers entirely, consumed by the very thing that had called me, a fate they described with an chilling clinical detachment that implied it was not merely death, but utter dissolution. And they trained me not with books and lectures, not with theories or philosophies, but with sensory deprivation that pushed the boundaries of human endurance, with prolonged exposure to the subtle, maddening vibrations of the dark that warped the very fabric of my perception, with a lexicon of suffering and a grammar of dread that seeped into my very being, rewriting the parameters of my perception, stripping away all that was superfluous, all that was human, leaving only the raw, sharpened instrument. My education was not academic. It was existential, a constant, brutal immersion into the abyss until my own internal landscape mirrored its terrifying depths. My cell, as I call it, is not a cell for me, but for the subjects, a circular chamber carved from living rock. Its surface not smooth, but rippled, as if the very stone had once been molten and then frozen in a sudden spasm of primal agony, still retaining the memory of that primordial torment. The veins of dark, unidentifiable minerals threaded through the rock seemed to pulse faintly under certain conditions, a slow, almost imperceptible throb that mirrors a sluggish heartbeat. It is devoid of any discernible entrance once the heavy, multi-layered door, a marvel of ancient engineering and consecrated iron, etched with countless protective sigils that glow with a faint internal luminescence, shimmering like captured starlight, has sealed shut. The door itself is a mechanism of profound complexity, a series of interlocking stone and metal plates that slide into place with a grinding roar that reverberates through the very bones, each layer a barrier against not just physical escape, but also against psychic seepage, a bulwark against the subtle, insidious influence of the entities contained within. There are no windows, of course, only a single, dim, flickering orb of light suspended high above, its illumination not steady, but pulsating with an erratic, almost biological rhythm, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to writhe with a life of their own, mocking any sense of stillness or peace, perpetually shifting, perpetually unsettling. It's the only illumination I'm permitted, and only barely. Too much light, they say, and the truth recoils, retreating deeper into the shadows of the entity's consciousness, unable to bear the stark revelation, its essence fragmenting under the harsh glare. Too little, and it vanishes entirely, lost in the overwhelming darkness, unyielding to even the most potent compulsion, becoming one with the void it inhabits. The quality of this light is itself a tool, a sophisticated instrument of psychological manipulation, carefully calibrated to maximize vulnerability and minimize resistance, its fluctuating intensity designed to disorient and exhaust, a delicate balance understood only by the most ancient of keepers, whose millennia of experience have taught them the precise interplay between light, shadow, and the exposed psyche. The faint light dances across the sigils on the door, making them appear to breathe, to pulse with a hidden power, a constant reminder of the unseen forces at play. The rules here are absolute. They are not suggestions, not guidelines for behavior. They are the scaffolding that holds back utter chaos, the fragile barrier between the known and the abyss. Meticulously constructed over millennia of bitter experience and devastating failures, each precept forged in the crucible of unimaginable suffering and hard-won knowledge. I have them memorized, etched into my mind, not just through rote repetition, but through agonizing observation, through the horrific consequences visited upon those who dared to falter, whose hubris or weakness allowed the dark to gain purchase, to burrow into their very being. These rules are less about controlling the subjects and more about preserving the interrogator, about maintaining the thin membrane of sanity that separates us from the abyssal horrors we confront daily, a constant, desperate battle for self-preservation in the face of absolute annihilation. They are the catechism of survival whispered into the void. Rule number 1, never, under any circumstances, remove your cowl. My face, like the faces of all keepers, remains perpetually shrouded. It is not for anonymity, not precisely, as true anonymity is an illusion in this place, our very souls known to the entities we face, our presence a beacon in the spiritual darkness. It is for insulation. They say the true horror of what we see, what we hear, what we become in this place is best kept from ourselves, our own reflections, for fear of what we might discern in the mirroring darkness. To gaze upon the subject's face, a distorted mirror of cosmic malevolence, a twisted parody of life, and then upon your own, unfiltered, unveiled, is to invite a transfer, a binding, a subtle yet irreversible psychic contagion that even the most ancient rituals, the most potent purifying rites cannot undo, for it is a wound inflicted directly upon the soul's deepest layers. The cowl is woven from a particular dark fabric, spun from fibers of an unknown origin, fibers that seem to absorb light rather than reflect it, steeped for decades, sometimes centuries, in holy oils, infused with sigils of protection, painstakingly embroidered with threads of consecrated silver and strands of human hair, each strand a sacrifice, a dedication. It's heavy, hot, oppressive, and smells faintly of incense and old blood, a scent that speaks of countless rituals performed, of sacrifices offered, of truths violently extracted, a composite aroma that permeates the very air I breathe. Sometimes, when I breathe, I imagine I can taste the fabric, thick with centuries of secreted prayers, whispered invocations, and unholy exhalations, a composite aroma of all that has transpired within these walls, a silent record of countless battles for the soul, a tangible echo of the suffering and defiance that has passed through this chamber. The cowl itself becomes a part of the identity, a second skin, a constant reminder of the barrier that must always exist between self and horror. Rule number 2, never refer to the subject by any name or pronoun other than it, to grant it individuality, to acknowledge its personhood, however monstrous, however ancient, is to grant it power. And power, down here, is a currency more dangerous than any coin, more potent than any weapon, for it is the fuel of these entities, the very essence of their being, their lifeblood, their means of perpetuation. They thrive on recognition, on fear, on the psychic energy generated by human emotion. Denying their individuality is to starve them of a crucial sustenance. They arrive in a state of enforced dormancy, a temporary torpor induced by ancient wards and potent incantations, carried in by the silent servitors, hulking, robed figures whose faces are also perpetually hidden, though I suspect theirs are less for protection against psychic contamination, and more because they are no longer truly human, their forms having been irrevocably altered by generations of exposure to this place and its inhabitants, their movements ponderous and mechanical, their very presence radiating a profound, unsettling stillness. The servitors are the muscle, the binders, the ones who prepare the chamber, chaining the dormant entity to the central stone altar with restraints that glow with a faint, protective blue light. This light is not merely illumination, it is a manifestation of collective spiritual energy, woven into the very metal of the chains, a tangible expression of focused will. The light of faith, they say, a tangible expression of the sacred, a visible bulwark against the encroaching dark. Or perhaps the light of sheer will, weaponized, the distilled intent of countless souls dedicated to containment and control, a force as pure and unwavering as the darkness it seeks to bind, a constant, shimmering reminder of humanity's desperate, enduring defiance against the void. The chains themselves are forged from an unknown alloy, responsive to specific incantations, and their blue light pulses in a slow, rhythmic beat, like the heart of some enormous, benign beast holding back the primordial chaos. Rule number 3. Recite the litany of severance precisely, without deviation, before and after each session. The litany is a string of archaic Latin, guttural, and rhythmic, a series of complex phonemes and ancient invocations designed to create a psychic firewall, to cleanse the pathways between their reality and mine, sealing the mental wounds that inevitably open during an interrogation, no matter how vigilant one might be. Miss a word, stumble on a syllable, allow even a momentary lapse in concentrations, and you risk leaving a door ajar, a tiny crevice in the protective barrier. And down here, every open door, every tiny fissure is an invitation, an ingress for the creeping tendrils of influence, a potential breach in the fragile defense of one's own mind, a gaping maw waiting to swallow your sanity whole. I remember Brother Thomas, a keeper whose tenure preceded mine by many decades, a man whose legend was spoken in hushed tones even among the elders, a cautionary tale whispered in the echoing corridors. He was a meticulous man, known for his unwavering piety, his devotion to every single syllable of the sacred rites, a bastion of discipline. One night, he emerged from a session, reciting the litany, but his voice was off, subtly modulated, an almost imperceptible shift in timbre and cadence, a barely audible resonance that was not his own. The elders noticed immediately. Their senses are honed to detect even the most minute spiritual dissonances. their ears attuned to the slightest fracture in reality. They stripped his cowl, a ritual of shaming and condemnation, a stark unveiling of his horrifying fate. His face, it wasn't his own anymore. It was a distorted echo of the subject he had interrogated, a viscous, shifting tapestry of agony and malevolence, his features rippling like oil on water, his eyes holding the alien, contemptuous glint of the entity he had interrogated, a perfect, terrifying mirror of the horror he had faced. He begged for absolution, for release, his voice a guttural plea that was still recognizable as human, but there was none to be given, for the binding was complete, irreversible, profound. They led him away, deeper into the forgotten tunnels to a place where the sun has never touched, where the very air is thick with ancient sorrows, where the stone itself seems to weep, and his screams, a horrifying symphony of human anguish mingling with alien glee, lingered for what felt like days, slowly fading into the general hum of the earth's suffering, a constant low thrum that underlies all sounds in this subterranean realm. His fate served as a constant, chilling reminder, a silent sermon on the absolute necessity of precision and vigilance, a terrifying testament to the unforgiving nature of our charge. It taught me that the rules are not arbitrary. They are the very threads that hold us together, that prevent our unraveling. These rules are not merely for the subjects. They are for us, for the fragile sanity we desperately cling to, for the preservation of the thin veneer of humanity that separates us from the things we face. Because what we encounter down here, it challenges everything we believe, everything we are. It rips apart the fabric of reality, exposing the terrifying void beneath. And we, the keepers, are the ones tasked with standing at that precipice, staring into the abyss while attempting to remain, against all odds, ourselves, maintaining a tenuous grasp on the very essence of what it means to be human in a universe utterly indifferent to such concepts. Our very existence is a defiant act, a refusal to be consumed, a desperate clinging to form and purpose in the face of overwhelming cosmic chaos. The first time I was truly alone, with one, my training complete, my cowl secured, my litany memorized, my hands sweating within the heavy gloves, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. It was a relatively small one, or so they said, their voices measured and clinical, their reports meticulously detailing its limited influence. A minor corruption, a whisper of something ancient that had latched onto a priest in a remote village, twisting his faith into blasphemy, transforming his congregation into a coven of dark worshippers, infecting their prayers with vile distortions and their rites with unholy blood. The servitors had deposited it, still and silent, on the altar. It looked like a man, or what remained of one, gaunt, stretched, its skin the color of old parchment, brittle and translucent, almost glowing with a sickly internal pallor, its limbs impossibly long and thin, like desiccated branches, ending in clawed, skeletal fingers that seemed to perpetually twitch. Its jaw was dislocated, hanging open in a silent scream, revealing rows of teeth that were too many, too sharp, and too white. But it was the eyes that caught me, even then. Closed, yet radiating a pressure, a nascent malevolence that pulsed against my own mental barriers, a silent scream of defiance and hatred, a profound sense of ancient suffering. They were closed, but I knew, with an instinct forged in the dark, an intuition sharpened by weeks of enforced isolation and exposure to the unseen, that they were watching me even then, perceiving me through some other, more insidious sense. The air around it seemed colder, heavier, charged with an oppressive stillness that spoke of eons of patience, of unspeakable horrors silently biding their time. I began the preparation. The anointing oils, thick and fragrant with sacred resins, essences of hyssop and myrrh, traced the sigils of binding on the cold stone of the altar, feeling the faint warmth of their activation beneath my gloved fingers. A subtle hum of power, the rhythmic chant that prepares the air itself, infusing the very molecules of the chamber with protective energies. each syllable a shield, each word a ward, building an invisible barrier around the chamber, a fragile sphere of resistance. My voice, though trembling with an internal tremor, resonated in the chamber, a fragile shield against the creeping dread that emanated from the altar, a desperate assertion of human will against cosmic indifference. Then the moment came. The moment to awaken it, to peel back the veil of dormancy that held it in temporary thrall, to force its consciousness back into this plane of existence. Apparite, I commanded, my voice deeper, more resonant than my own, a sound that seemed to draw upon the very stone around me, upon the ancient power embedded in the foundational rock, a primal bellow of authority, the ancient word for open, a command that cut through the silence like a sharpened blade, striking at the core of the entity's enforced sleep. It was a trigger, a switch activating the deeper layers of the binding, a complex interplay of spoken word, focused intent, and the dormant energies woven into the chamber's very structure. The chains hummed, a low, vibrating thrum that permeated the floor and walls, resonating through my bones, a tangible connection to the power of containment. The blue light intensified, burning brighter, casting harsh, stark shadows that writhed and stretched, mirroring the awakening horror. And the thing on the altar began to twitch, slowly, agonizingly. Its head lolled, a sickening snap of cartilage as if its neck had been broken and rebroken countless times, and its eyes, two black pits that seemed to absorb all light, all hope, all sanity, snapped open. There was no iris, no pupil, no hint of anything resembling life, just an infinite void that mirrored the darkness within me, threatening to swallow my own consciousness whole, a direct challenge to my very being, a glimpse into the ultimate emptiness. It didn't scream. It didn't thrash. It just looked at me. And in that gaze I felt 1,000 years of forgotten languages, of unspoken cruelties, of cosmic indifference that made human suffering seem less than a cosmic dust mote, an utterly insignificant speck in the vast, uncaring machinery of the universe. It knew me, not Silas, the man, but the function I represented, the role I played in this macabre dance of containment, a disposable tool in an endless conflict. It knew the terror it inspired, the gnawing dread it could invoke, and it reveled in it, a silent, predatory glee emanating from its abyssal gaze, a profound sense of satisfaction at the fear it observed within me, a silent communion of dread. Its eyes held no expression, yet conveyed an entire universe of contempt. And then, the voice. Not from its mouth, which remained slack and slightly agape, a parody of human expression, a grotesque imitation of a smile, but directly into my mind. A cacophony of whispers, a choir of suffering, yet coalescing into a single, venomous thought that clawed at my innermost being, tearing at the edges of my composure. You are nothing. Your God is a lie. Your purpose is a joke. Your efforts are futile. Your existence is a brief, pointless flicker in an uncaring void, a fleeting illusion. All that you cling to is destined for dissolution, for oblivion. You are but a breath, a fleeting echo, soon to be silenced. The mental assault was immediate, a battering ram against my carefully constructed defenses, seeking out every weakness, every insecurity, every hidden doubt I possessed, probing the raw nerves of my psyche. It felt like myriad tiny needles piercing the skull, injecting venomous despair directly into the brain. I gripped the holy artifact, a polished bone shard said to be from a saint of profound spiritual fortitude, warm and solid in my gloved hand, its faint protective aura a tangible anchor in the storm of psychic assault, a fragile point of resistance against the overwhelming tide of malevolence. I repeated the first line of the litany, a protective chant, forcing myself to push past the mental din, to reassert the boundaries of my own consciousness, to remind myself of the layers of protection I had meticulously built. "Silence, thing," I commanded, my voice surprisingly steady, imbued with an authority that wasn't entirely my own, but rather an echo of the collective will of the keepers, an ancient lineage of defiance. "Your blasphemies are known. They have no power here. They are but echoes of your own self-deception, the pathetic cries of a being that fears the light of truth." It laughed then, a dry, rattling sound that seemed to scrape against the very stone walls, sending shivers down my spine, a sound like dead leaves skittering across a tombstone or the dry grinding of ancient bones. The sound was not of mirth, but of pure, contemptuous mockery. "Known? You know nothing, Worm. You merely parrot what your masters tell you, what they allow you to perceive. You are a puppet, little interrogator, dancing on strings you cannot see, manipulated by forces you cannot comprehend. You are a plaything, a pawn, in a game far older than your species, far vaster than your meager understanding." Its eyes narrowed, or rather, the blackness within them intensified, seeming to pull at my very soul, threatening to drag it into the same infinite void they embodied, a void of absolute non-existence. "Do you not feel it, little interrogator? The hollowness, the emptiness where your certainty should be, the gnawing doubt that screams at you in the dark, the insidious whispers of meaninglessness that haunt your waking hours and infiltrate your desperate dreams, the fear that you are already lost, already consumed?" This was the game. They try to break you before you even begin, to dismantle your resolve, to sow the seeds of despair, to unravel the very threads of your identity. They try to find the crack, the chink in the armor, the hidden vulnerability, the secret fear that you nurture in the deepest recesses of your being. It's why the cowl, why the rules, why the relentless discipline, the agonizing training that strips away all pretense and weakness, to deny them any purchase, any leverage over the delicate machinery of the human spirit, to present an impenetrable front. I pushed back, focusing my will, recalling the years of harsh discipline, the meditations in the silent dark that taught me to silence my own internal chaos, the rote memorization of sacred texts, each word a bulwark against the invading tide, each phrase a shield against their psychic spears. I was a vessel, nothing more, an empty chalice to be filled with the will of the keepers, a conduit for their purpose, a conduit for the question. My personal self was irrelevant, a fragile thing that had to be suppressed, even sacrificed for the greater objective. "Tell me," I began, my voice clear and authoritative, drawing upon a strength I barely knew I possessed, a reservoir of ancestral will that flowed through the very lineage of keepers, a timeless current of absolute resolve. What is its true name? The name whispered in the shadows, the sigil that binds its essence, the word that unlocks its prison. And that was it. Not the question yet, but the lead-up, the crucial first step. Each subject has a true name, a name it whispers in the dark, a name that binds it to the specific corruption it embodies, to the particular flavor of cosmic horror it represents, to the unique resonance of its existence. This is what the elders seek, not to save souls. No, that is beyond us, a conceit we long ago abandoned, a sentimental weakness we cannot afford, but to understand, to catalog, to contain. Knowledge, down here in these lightless depths, is the only weapon that truly works, the only defense against utter dissolution, the only means of carving out a temporary space of order in an otherwise chaotic universe. It is our shield and our sword. The thing on the altar writhed, its impossibly long limbs flailing against the glowing chains, the metal groaning under an unseen pressure, its form flickering at the edges as if struggling to maintain its physical manifestation, its tenuous hold on this dimension. The mental whispers intensified, becoming a hurricane of despair and fury, a maelstrom of raw, untamed malevolence, a torrent of psychic shrapnel designed to tear my mind apart. You dare demand? You dare to think you have dominion over that which predates your very star? I am Legion. I am the shadow that dances at the edge of your sight, in the corners of your sanity. I am the fear that grips your heart in the dead of night, the terror that wakes you in a cold sweat. I am the crushing weight of oblivion. I am the forgotten truth of your ultimate insignificance. I am the scream of a dying universe. Images flashed in my mind, vivid and horrifying, burning cities dissolving into dust, weeping children with eyes ripped from their sockets, vast oceans boiling away under a sky of screaming fire, entire civilizations reduced to ash, their monuments crumbling into meaningless dust, black holes consuming suns, the very fabric of space-time ripping apart at the seams. Pure, unadulterated horror, crafted with exquisite precision to break my resolve, to make me doubt the very meaning of existence, to reduce me to a gibbering wreck. I held firm. I had been taught to recognize these illusions, these psychic projections. They were powerful, yes, designed to overwhelm the senses and shatter the will, to drown the mind in a sea of despair, but ultimately they were just smoke and mirrors, a desperate attempt to avoid the inevitable, a last-ditch effort to preserve their secrets. I do not demand thing, I countered, my voice echoing the ancient authority of the institution, an authority that transcended my own individual self, a voice that spoke with the weight of millennia. I compel. Tell me its true name. Speak it, or be unmade, reduced to the raw, impotent energy from which you sprang. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the screams. It was the silence of absolute resistance, of a will pitted against another, both seemingly unbreakable, both straining against the fundamental forces of the universe, a silent battle of titans on a spiritual plane. For a long moment, perhaps an eternity stretched thin and brittle, we simply existed in that shared space of defiance, two entities locked in a silent, cosmic grapple, the air crackling with unspoken tension. Then, slowly, infinitesimally, the thing on the altar began to change. Its skin, already stretched and parchment-thin, tightened further, pulling back from its bones as if shrinking from an internal pressure, as if its very essence was being squeezed. Its eyes, those abyssal pits, flickered with something akin to a frustrated rage, a desperate, impotent fury, a silent roar of unwilling submission. The aura of malevolence around it wavered, momentarily subdued, and then a sound, not a word in any human tongue, but a guttural expulsion, like wet earth being torn, like ancient stones grinding together under immense pressure, like the first groan of a dying world, and then another, and another, each sound a struggle, a violent birth, until a single syllable, raw and painful, formed in the air. Not merely in my mind, but acoustically, resonating in the chamber, a physical manifestation of a forbidden truth, a name ripped from the depths of cosmic darkness. A name that, once spoken, was immediately captured by the intricate recording devices hidden within the living walls, devices that store such forbidden utterances in crystalline matrices, encoded beyond human comprehension, impervious to decay or corruption. I would not remember it. I could not remember it. That was part of the blessing or the curse of this work, a necessary amnesia for the sake of survival, a protective blank slate for the fragile human mind. The conscious mind could not bear the weight of such true names. Their very sound was enough to unravel sanity, to rewrite the parameters of reality. Once the name was given, however reluctantly, however painfully extracted, the entity would weaken. Its connection to the physical plane momentarily severed, its power reduced, its essence temporarily bound, like a river diverted from its source. The interrogation would pause. the air still crackling with residual malevolence, a faint electrical hum of spent power. I would recite the litany of severance, meticulously, word for word, feeling the psychic barrier solidify around me once more, like a hardening shell, insulating me from the lingering echoes of the entity's presence, from the psychic fragments left clinging to the atmosphere. The servitors would then enter, their movements slow and deliberate, their massive frames casting long, shifting shadows, to remove the now dormant subject and prepare the chamber for the next. The cycle would continue, an endless, horrifying ritual, each repetition eroding a little more of my soul, a slow, insidious attrition. But that was just the beginning. Over the years, the subjects grew more complex, the corruptions deeper, the entities more ancient, their very forms defying conventional understanding, stretching the limits of perception. I've faced things that didn't even possess a discernible form, things that appeared as shimmering distortions in the air, like heat haze over a desert, or as an impossible geometry that burned the retinas of my mind, causing agonizing psychic migraines, a kaleidoscope of blasphemous mathematics. I've heard languages that seemed to unravel the fabric of reality with each syllable, voices that spoke of universes beyond our comprehension, where sanity was a forgotten myth, where dimensions folded upon themselves in nonsensical patterns, where light and darkness intertwined in terrifying union. Each interrogation pushed the boundaries of my endurance, both mental and spiritual, forcing me to adapt, to become more than merely human, to shed the limitations of my species. I learned to perceive without sight, to hear without ears, to understand without intellect, operating on a level of raw, primal intuition that often left me feeling more like the entities I interrogated than the humans I ostensibly served. Rule number 4. Never look directly into the eyes of a subject for more than 3 breaths once it is fully awakened, unless specifically compelling a confession, a direct act of a will designed to break its resistance, a moment of calculated, perilous vulnerability. The gaze is a tether, a pathway for influence, a direct conduit for mental and spiritual contamination, a thin, shimmering thread that connects your soul to theirs. One night, I was careless, caught in a moment of professional curiosity, a flicker of scientific fascination, despite the horror, a lapse born of exhaustion and a foolish belief in my own immunity, a hubris I would soon pay for dearly. The subject was a particularly virulent possession, a being that had consumed a man whole, leaving only a shell that mimicked human form with grotesque precision, a marionette of flesh animated by something utterly alien, its every movement a jarring imitation of life. Its eyes, unlike the others, were intensely human, reflecting light with an unsettling normalcy, with pupils that dilated and contracted in a grotesque mockery of life, hinting at the tormented soul trapped within. I stared, trying to decipher the humanity trapped within the monster, seeking a flicker of the man who once inhabited that form, a foolish and ultimately dangerous act of empathy, a transgression against the very core principles of our order. 3 breaths became 4, then 5, then 6, then an eternity. In that instant, I felt it. A cold tendril, a parasitic thought worming its way into deepest consciousness, bypassing all my defenses, settling like a viper in the core of my being, wrapping itself around the delicate machinery of my mind. It wasn't a scream, not an image, but a simple, profound understanding that everything I believed was a lie, that all my efforts were for naught, that the universe was an uncaring, meaningless void, a crushing, absolute certainty that there was no divine order, only chaos, and that my efforts were futile, a meaningless exercise in delaying the inevitable, a desperate dance against a cosmic truth that demanded utter nihilism. For a week, I could barely function. The thought was a constant corrosive whisper, unraveling my will, dissolving my purpose, making every breath an act of profound futility. The elders, observing my decline with their usual impassive detachment, their eyes holding no judgment, only cold observation, subjected me to a painful series of purification rituals. Arcane rites involving blistering, sacred salts rubbed into open wounds, potent psychoactive vapors that induced terrifying hallucinations, and prolonged sonic bombardment with anti-entropic frequencies that felt like my very atoms were being pulled apart. These rituals burned away the foreign psychic material, peeling it back from my soul layer by agonizing layer, leaving me drained and brittle, a hollow shell, utterly remade. I still feel the scar, a phantom limb of despair lurking at the edge of my thoughts, a constant reminder of my folly, of the ever-present danger of breaking even the simplest of rules, a permanent mark of my vulnerability. The memory of that understanding is a silent, persistent hum, a poison that slowly seeps into my well of resolve. They don't tell you everything, not at first. They reveal the truth in layers, like peeling back rotten skin, each revelation more repulsive than the last, each layer revealing a deeper horror. You start by extracting names, the foundational identity of the corruption, its signature. Then the methods of corruption, how it spreads, how it twists, minds and bodies, the specific vectors of its influence. Then the precise nature of the entity's influence, its goals, its true purpose, its place in the cosmic hierarchy. Each step brings you closer to the core, closer to the true, terrifying nature of what you are fighting. Or perhaps what you are serving, an increasingly unsettling question that festers in the dark corners of my mind, a cancerous doubt that gnaws at my last vestiges of meaning. The line between resistance and participation blurs with each passing year, each extracted truth. My role evolved. I became the specialist for the unyielding, the ones that defied conventional interrogation, that resisted all known methods of coercion, that seemed to draw strength from their own confinement, the ones that spat blasphemies in forgotten tongues, that could shatter glass, that twisted the very fabric of the sacred space with their sheer malevolence, their defiance a palpable force that warped the air, making the light flicker and the stone groan. For these, there was a deeper protocol, a more invasive method, a final desperate measure. For these, they make me ask the question. It is not just a tool. It is a weapon of last resort, a devastating instrument forged in eons of struggle. The question is not a phrase. It is not a single sentence, not a query spoken in any known language, human or otherwise. It is a carefully constructed sequence of sonic frequencies, ancient languages intertwined with forgotten dialects, and specific mental imprints, a symphony of targeted psychological warfare designed to dismantle the very essence of a being, to unravel its core identity. It probes the deepest recesses of an entity's being, tearing away the layers of defiance, stripping it bare of its defenses, exposing its raw, vulnerable core. It's like flaying the soul itself, exposing the nerves of its true identity to the raw air of truth, an act of spiritual vivisection. The sounds are not merely sound. They are patterns of resonance that vibrate with the fundamental fabric of existence, disrupting the entity's inherent stability. The process is arduous. It requires days of preparation, a period of monastic asceticism and profound self-emptying. Intense fasting, dehydrating the body to sharpen the mind, bringing it to a state of near hypersensitivity, a fragile, heightened awareness, sensory deprivation, isolating myself in chambers devoid of light, sound, or even tactile sensation, to strip away all connection to the mundane world, to sever the anchors to my former life. Prolonged meditations in the darkest antechamber, where the air itself seems to shimmer with unseen energies, where the veil between worlds is thinnest, where the boundaries of perception dissolve. I must be utterly empty, a perfect void, a blank slate, for the question to properly resonate, for its terrible power to flow through me unimpeded, uncorrupted by the clutter of personal being. Any trace of personal emotion, any flicker of doubt, any attachment to the mundane world, any lingering shred of my former self can contaminate the frequency, rendering it useless or worse, turning its devastating power back upon myself, utterly annihilating my consciousness, reducing me to a screaming, empty husk. It is a terrifying dance with oblivion, a deliberate self-erasure. Rule number 5. Before asking the question, you must submit to the rite of dissolution. This rite involves a draft of bitter black liquid, an alchemical concoction of pulverized bone from ancient saints, sacred herbs grown in geomantically potent soil, and something else, something viscous and primal, something I dare not contemplate, for its very nature would unmake me, a substance that tastes of primordial earth and cosmic despair, which induces a temporary, near-death state. Your spirit hovers at the precipice, unbound from the flesh, connected by only the thinnest, most fragile of threads, a shimmering filament of pure consciousness. It is in this state of existential fragility, of profound vulnerability and utter detachment that the true power of the question can be channeled, for the boundaries of self are temporarily dissolved, and the conduit becomes pure. It is agonizing. Each time I feel my consciousness shredding, my very being dissolving into a million scattered motes of light, my identity fragmenting into nothingness, like a mirror shattering into dust. The pain is not physical, it is existential, a tearing of the soul from its moorings, a violent divorce of self from being, a profound sense of utter loss that leaves a permanent, aching void. But it is necessary. It is the only way to become a true conduit, a pure channel for the immense power required to bypass the limitations of human flesh and mind. After the rite, I am carried to the interrogation chamber, still semi-comatose, my mind a blank slate, purged of all personal thought and emotion, a tabula rasa awaiting the imprint of cosmic will. The servitors, their movements almost ritualistic in their slow precision, their faces impassive, strap me into a specially designed chair, one forged from cold, dark iron, inlaid with glowing, protective symbols of archaic design, symbols that pulse with a faint, internal light, absorbing and channeling energies. My wrists and ankles are bound securely, the restraints warm and firm, my head secured in a brace that keeps my gaze fixed forward, preventing any errant visual contact, any unintentional connection. The subject, for these sessions, is never chained to the altar. Instead, it is contained within a shimmering cage of pure energy, a field that crackles and hums with suppressed power, centered directly before me, mere feet away. The cage vibrates with a raw intensity, a furious tremor that echoes in my own bones, a palpable manifestation of the entity's rage and imprisonment, a contained storm of malevolence. The air within the cage seems to warp and distort, reflecting the entity's inherent instability, its desperate struggle against the bindings of light. And then they activate me. They infuse me with the prepared energies, a surge of raw, ancient power that courses through my veins, igniting my nerves with a searing, otherworldly fire, a feeling like liquid light burning every synapse. My vocal cords resonate with a deeper, impossible timbre, a sound that vibrates through the very air and stone, through the bedrock itself, an utterance that seems to shake the foundations of existence. My mind expands, accessing a vast reservoir of forbidden knowledge, of forgotten truths, of the collective consciousness of keepers past and present, a torrent of information that would shatter a lesser being. It is not me speaking, not really. It is the institution speaking through me, the collective will of centuries of keepers, channeled through my shattered consciousness, a unified voice of absolute, authority, and terrible purpose, a single, unwavering instrument of cosmic law. I am merely the mouth, the vessel, the temporary bridge. The question begins. It is not a single utterance, but a flowing river of sound, a torrent of intent, a symphony of dissolution. My mouth moves. My tongue twists into shapes no human organ should be capable of forming, contorting into impossible phonemes, sounds that seem to scrape against the very fabric of reality. The words are not from any earthly language, not even the archaic Latin of the litany. They are primeval, born from the raw stuff of creation and destruction, from the very forces that shaped the cosmos, whispers from the void before time. They vibrate at a fundamental level, shaking the very atoms of the chamber, of the subject, of my own body, each syllable a precisely calibrated assault, a targeted wave of psychic force. Each word seems to tear at the fabric of reality itself, causing subtle distortions in the air, ripples in the very light. I feel the words as much as I speak them. Each syllable is a hook, a barb, tearing at the subject's essence, shredding its defenses, prying apart its constituent elements. Each phrase is a lever, prying open hidden compartments of its being, exposing its deepest vulnerabilities, its primal fears, its true, horrifying nature. The entities writhe within their energy cages, not in physical pain, for these beings exist beyond such mundane sensation, but in sheer violation, their very existence being unraveled, their carefully constructed identities dissolving under the terrible light of forced revelation. They scream, not with sound, for their forms may have no vocal apparatus, but with pure telepathic agony that assaults my fractured mind, a cacophony of fear, rage, and profound existential distress, a chorus of cosmic horror. I see their true forms then, not through my eyes, which are glazed and unseeing, but through the expanded perception granted by the right, through the raw clarity of my unbound spirit. Shifting geometries that defy Euclidean space, impossible colors that burn the mind, voids within voids that swallow all light, beings of pure concept made manifest in a grotesque parody of form, their true identities unveiled, their intrinsic nature laid bare, utterly exposed and vulnerable. The vision is both terrifying and utterly captivating, a glimpse behind the veil that forever alters the landscape of my inner world. Sometimes they fight. They launch mental assaults of unimaginable power, trying to shatter the conduit, to break the flow of the question, to reclaim their anonymity and their terrible power, to sever the connection to my mind. I've felt my skull fracture from the inside, a searing pain that felt like my very brain was boiling, my blood scream as psychic backlash hammered against me, threatening to obliterate my consciousness, to reduce me to a vegetative state, a mindless ruin. But the bonds hold, the protective sigils on the chair and within the walls glow brighter, feeding energy back into my system, reinforcing the conduit, making it stronger, more resilient. The ancient chair holds me fast, an unyielding anchor in the storm, a rock in the churning sea of cosmic conflict. And the question continues, inexorable, unrelenting, a river of cosmic force that cannot be turned aside, a torrent that carves its way through all resistance, a force of nature given terrible, divine purpose. My body trembles. My teeth clench, but the words continue flowing from me like molten lead. One time it was a creature of absolute despair. It had woven itself into the fabric of a small town, a place called Oakhaven, causing a slow, creeping spiritual rot, draining the joy and hope from its inhabitants, driving people to quiet, listless self-destruction, an insidious spiritual plague that left them empty shells, devoid of purpose or will. When it was brought here, it appeared as a hunched, shapeless mass of shadow, perpetually weeping tears of black ichor that stained the energy cage, leaving behind shimmering, oily residue that pulsed with a faint, malevolent light. As I began, The question, it didn't scream, it didn't thrash, it began to whisper directly into the core of my being, revealing my deepest fears, my profound loneliness, the gnawing doubt that had always lurked beneath my professional facade, carefully constructed over 17 years. Layer by agonizing layer. It showed me my own death, alone and forgotten, my work rendered meaningless, all my suffering for naught, an endless, silent void mirroring my own existence, a universe of cold indifference. It was a vision so potent, so perfectly tailored to my secret anxieties, that for a moment I faltered. The words of the question sputtered, a momentary hiccup in the torrent of power, a brief, terrifying pause. The energy cage around the creature flickered, its protective hum wavering, threatening to dissolve. I felt a cold tendril of something akin to empathy, a profound understanding of its desolate existence, of the cosmic horror of being the embodiment of despair itself, a being born of pure sorrow. And in that moment, I almost broke, almost surrendered to the sweet, seductive release of meaninglessness, the ultimate quietus. But a deeper, more primal instinct surged, cutting through the momentary weakness. The training, the discipline, the sheer, ingrained refusal to yield that had been hammered into my very bones, into the very essence of my being. I focused on the pain, on the agony of my own self-dissolution during the rite, on the stark, terrifying clarity of my purpose, on the desperate necessity of my existence. I let the despair wash over me, through me, recognizing it as a weapon, a targeted assault, not a truth, a mere illusion designed to tempt me away from my duty. And then, with a renewed surge of alien power, I pushed back, channeling the full, terrible force of the Keeper's collective will. The question roared from my lips, louder, more insistent, tearing through its illusions, ripping away its carefully constructed facade of suffering, stripping it bare, exposing its raw, screaming core. It shrieked then, a sound that threatened to unmake me, a sound that spoke of fundamental loneliness, of utter cosmic abandonment, of the pure, unadulterated terror of its own existence, an echo of the universe's ultimate indifference, a scream that seemed to tear at the very fabric of despair itself. And then it broke. Not physically, its shadow form remained, but spiritually. Its essence dissolved into a swirling vortex of black smoke, coalescing into a single point of absolute crushing emptiness, a pinpoint of pure non-being, a singularity of nothingness. And within that emptiness, the answer to the question was revealed. Not in words, which would have been inadequate, for no human language could contain such truth, but in a flash of pure, unfiltered knowledge, a direct download of cosmic information into my expanded consciousness. A chilling truth about the nature of despair, its genesis, its methods of propagation, its ultimate weakness, a profound understanding of its place in the cosmic tapestry, its purpose within the vast, uncaring engine of existence. The servitors recorded it, absorbed it into their vast forbidden archives, adding another chapter to the horrifying compendium of the unspoken, another entry in the endless ledger of cosmic horrors. I would not remember it, not truly, for my mind would be purged, but the echo of its terror would linger within me, a phantom limb of knowledge, a ghost in the machine of my mind, a subtle poison that would continue to seep into my being, slowly eroding my humanity. After each session of the question, I am utterly spent. The energy drains away, leaving me a husk, hollowed out and fragile. A marionette with severed strings, collapsed within the cold embrace of the iron chair. My body aches, a dull, pervasive throb in every bone and muscle. My mind is a screaming void filled with residual echoes and shattered fragments of cosmic truth. A whirlwind of forbidden knowledge that threatens to tear my sanity apart. The rite of dissolution, followed by the channeling, takes a profound toll, tearing at the very fabric of my being, leaving me raw and exposed. I am returned to my small, austere living quarters, a tiny chamber barely large enough for my cot, and for days, sometimes weeks, I am incapacitated. My limbs feel like lead, heavy and unresponsive. My thoughts are fragmented, like shattered glass, clinging to the edges of oblivion, unable to coalesce into coherent patterns. I lie in the dark, listening to the rhythmic drip of water in the endless tunnels, the distant groans of the earth shifting in its ancient slumber, and the whispers that no longer come from the subjects, but from within my own ravaged psyche, a constant low hum of madness threatening to break through, a silent, insidious choir of despair. The elders observe me, their hooded forms silent, their gazes impenetrable, their presence a palpable weight in the room, watching over their damaged tool. They ensure my recovery, feeding me bitter tonics brewed from unknown roots and minerals, performing strange, quiet rituals over my inert form, intoning ancient words of restoration in hushed, resonant voices. They are nurturing their tool, ensuring it remains sharp, remains functional, prepared for the next time the abyss calls, prepared to wield me against the next ancient horror that dares to stir. Rule number 6. Never attempt to comprehend the full scope of the knowledge revealed through the question. The human mind is not built for such truths, its fragile architecture incapable of containing such vast, primordial information, its very structure too limited, too temporal to grasp the eternal and the infinite. To fully grasp them, to truly internalize the cosmic revelations, is to invite madness, to unravel the very threads of your own sanity, to dissolve your identity into the undifferentiated chaos of the universe, to become one with the very horrors you interrogate. The information is for the archives, for the collective, for the institution. Your role is simply to extract it, to be a temporary conduit, a messenger who must forget the message. It is a necessary protection, a safeguard against total psychological collapse, a mandated amnesia for the sake of functional survival. They call it the blessing of oblivion, though it often feels like a curse, this enforced ignorance, this denial of ultimate understanding. This rule is the hardest to obey, a constant temptation to the very core of my being, a siren call to ultimate understanding that promises both enlightenment and annihilation. During the channeling of the question, when the entity breaks and the raw knowledge floods my consciousness, there are fleeting moments of terrible clarity, brief, agonizing insights that pierce through the fog of ritual and pain. Fragments of understanding that defy logic and reason, that reshape my entire world view, dissolving years of carefully constructed dogma, glimpses of what lies beyond the veil, beyond our understanding of reality, beyond the very concept of existence. And in those glimpses, I have seen things that shake me to my core, things that tear at the very foundations of my sanity, leaving gaping wounds in my psyche. I've seen that the demons we interrogate are not simply evil in the simplistic human sense, born of malice or intent, but forces. Primal, indifferent, ancient beyond imagining, they are as much a part of the universal tapestry as light and shadow, as gravity and time. They are not merely opposing good. They are expressions of fundamental cosmic principles that predate morality itself, concepts made manifest, woven into the fabric of the universe from its very inception. They are the architects of chaos, the weavers of despair, the silent observers of oblivion, acting out their intrinsic natures without malice or judgment, simply being what they are. Cosmic entities following their predetermined paths, their existence as natural and inevitable as the rising and setting of suns. Their evil is merely a reflection of our limited human perspective, a label we affix to forces we cannot comprehend or control. They embody fundamental laws that, to our tiny minds, appear monstrous and malevolent, yet they are as pure in their chaotic essence as any star in its fiery birth. And I've seen the other side, too, the true nature of the divine entities, the ones we are supposedly serving, the sources of the sacred power we wield. They are just as vast, just as indifferent, just as alien. Their motivations utterly beyond human comprehension, their light as cold and terrifying as any shadow. Their light is as blinding and destructive as the darkness of their counterparts, a force of pure, untamed energy that would scorch human understanding, reduce mortal minds to ash. They are not benevolent guardians. They are cosmic behemoths, equally devoid of empathy, equally focused on their own incomprehensible purposes. We are not pawns in a cosmic struggle of good versus evil, a noble battle for the soul of the universe, a grand narrative of redemption. We are merely part of a larger, incomprehensible mechanism, a grinder between two colossal, uncaring gears, caught in the endless churning dance of cosmic forces. Our struggles, our suffering, our triumphs, all are merely incidental byproducts of this vast, indifferent engine, the sparks that fly off the grinding gears, utterly meaningless in the grand scheme. The very concept of good and evil dissolves under this terrifying revelation, replaced by a brutal understanding of fundamental, amoral forces at play. We are not heroes, not champions, but janitors in the cosmic abattoir, cleaning up the mess between unknowable warring titans. This realization, this fleeting glimpse behind the curtain, this terrible truth, is what truly haunts me. It is the forbidden knowledge that slowly erodes my soul far more effectively than any direct demonic assault. It makes me question everything. My faith, such as it was, has been stripped bare, revealed as a fragile human construct, a comforting lie we tell ourselves to ward off the existential dread. My purpose, once seemingly noble, now appears as a mere act of maintenance within an incomprehensible system, a futile attempt to impose order where none can truly exist. The very nature of existence itself becomes a cruel joke, a cosmic irony played out on a grand, terrifying stage. Are we truly protecting humanity, shielding it from destruction, or merely maintaining a delicate, horrifying balance, ensuring that the cosmic gears continue to grind without fully destroying one another, prolonging the suffering for some unknown, alien purpose? Are we keeping these entities at bay, or are we simply feeding them, offering up the energy of our suffering, of our fear, to power a cosmic engine we cannot begin to understand, an engine that consumes all that is and all that will be in an endless cycle of creation and destruction? The answers, I realize, are too terrible to fully confront, for they would utterly unmake me. The elders, I suspect, know this. They have seen it all before, countless times over unimaginable eons. They are the ancient guardians of this horrific truth. Their own souls probably long since calcified by the unbearable burden, stripped of all humanity, leaving only a cold, stark functionality, emotionless machines of purpose. Their silence, their unwavering resolve, the sheer weight of their collective age speaks of a resignation that chills me more than any demonic roar, a profound acceptance of a universe devoid of inherent meaning, a universe of brutal, indifferent forces. They do not fight for victory. They fight for endless postponement, for a perpetual deferral of an inevitable end, a cosmic delay that serves only to prolong the suffering, to extend the dance. Their wisdom is a cold, sharp blade, cutting away all comforting illusions, leaving only the stark, unbearable truth. They are the living embodiment of the ultimate despair, yet they carry on, driven by a logic utterly alien to human warmth or hope. Lately, the nature of the subjects has shifted again, subtly but profoundly. They are not merely corruptions or possessions anymore, not discrete entities with defined origins and purposes. They are fragments, pieces of something unimaginably vast, something primordial and terrible, something that is slowly, agonizingly reassembling itself, drawing power from the very fabric of our reality, from the raw energy of existence, from the collective fear of sentient life. The last subject, a silent swirling vortex of pure fear, felt like a single, malignant thought ripped from the mind of a sleeping god, a tiny shard of immense malevolent consciousness, a sliver of an eye opening. When I asked the question, the answer wasn't about its origin or its methods of corruption. It was a single, devastating image, pressed directly into my expanded consciousness, a silent, overwhelming download of absolute terror, a vast, black eye, slowly opening in the void beyond our universe, its iris a swirling galaxy of dead stars, its gaze fixing upon our fragile reality, upon our tiny, insignificant planet, like a predator spotting its prey, a hungry, ancient leviathan awakening from an eon-long slumber, a gaze of immense, quiet hunger, of patient, inexorable consumption, a promise of total annihilation that transcended all language, all understanding. It was not a threat. It was a promise, a declaration of intent that transcended language, a statement of inevitable cosmic destiny. The very air around me seemed to thicken with its presence, a palpable weight of impending doom. And that's when the true terror began to set in, not just of the subjects themselves, but of the inevitable. What are we preparing for? What is it that is waking, gathering its shattered pieces across the cosmos, slowly solidifying into a force beyond comprehension? And when it is fully awake, fully formed, what then? Will the question still hold power against such a being, against something so primordial and vast, a being whose very existence defies definition? Or will it merely be a whimper in the face of absolute, cosmic indifference, a futile protest against the inevitable, a desperate, meaningless sound swallowed by the void? The thought chills me to my very core, a colder, deeper dread than any entity has ever managed to instill. It's the dread of utter helplessness, of being a speck of dust before an oncoming storm that will simply erase you from existence without even noticing. My dreams are no longer my own. They are filled with whispers of forgotten constellations, of impossible cities built from the screams of a billion lost souls, their structures rising into skies of perpetual twilight, architectural horrors crafted from pure suffering. I see the black eye, vast and silent, ever present, watching, its immense hunger a palpable weight pressing down upon my mind, threatening to crush it into oblivion. And sometimes, in those dreams, it is not merely watching. It is seeing through my eyes, peering out at this world through the windows of my soul, a profound violation that leaves me gasping for breath, thrashing in my cot, unable to distinguish between my own perceptions and those of the ancient entity. It feels like my very essence is being used as a lens, a window for something utterly alien to observe the mundane world, to study its prey. I wake in a cold sweat, the heavy cowl feeling less like protection and more like a shroud, already preparing me for a different kind of ending. One not of containment, but of absorption, of becoming part of the vast, hungry consciousness that lurks beyond the stars. The sense of dread is constant, a companion that never leaves, even in the fleeting moments of waking peace. Rule number 7. Never break the silence in your living quarters with any sound other than your own natural breathing, the recitation of protective prayers whispered silently in your mind, or the calls of the servitors when they summon you. They say that silence, down here, is the only truly neutral state, the only condition that offers any degree of safety from the omnipresent influence of the deep, a fragile bubble of non-resonance. Any intentional sound, any music, any unnecessary word, any utterance made for comfort or self-expression can act as a beacon, a thin thread back to the mundane world, a resonant frequency that the entities can exploit, a fragile pathway into your consciousness, a crack in the carefully maintained silence. I've heard stories of keepers who hummed a forgotten tune from their youth or spoke aloud to themselves in their overwhelming loneliness, seeking a momentary solace in their own voice, a flicker of remembrance of a life once lived, and were found the next morning twisted into grotesque parodies of their former selves, their bodies contorted into impossible shapes, their eyes reflecting an alien joy, their mouths frozen in an unnatural smile that bespoke not happiness, but a profound, unholy ecstasy, a horrifying communion. Their minds had been utterly remade, their souls consumed, their very identities rewritten by the encroaching darkness, becoming instruments of the things they once sought to contain. I adhere to this rule with grim devotion, the weight of those cautionary tales a constant presence in my awareness, a chilling reminder of the ever-present danger. The silence is absolute, a crushing, suffocating blanket that presses down on my consciousness, broken only by the rhythmic drip of subterranean water echoing in the distance, or the rustle of my own robes as I move, a sound that seems impossibly loud in the profound stillness, amplifying every minuscule noise. It's a silence that slowly, inexorably eats away at your mind, hollowing out the spaces where human connection once resided, leaving you utterly alone with your thoughts, your fears, and the terrifying echoes of the entities you've interrogated, a silent legion of horrors residing within your own skull. It's a silence that teaches you the true meaning of claustrophobia, not just of space, but of the mind, a feeling of being trapped within the confines of your own skull, with only the cosmic horrors for company, their whispers a constant, insidious chorus. It is the sound of existential isolation, a profound and terrifying emptiness that resonates with the void I've glimpsed. There are times, late at night, when I lie in my small, uncomfortable cot, staring into the impenetrable darkness of my cell, that I wonder what it would be like to simply walk away, to abandon this ancient prison, to leave these endless tunnels, to see the sun on a clear day, to breathe fresh air untainted by the scent of decay, to hear the laughter of children, the gentle murmur of a river, the distant chirping of birds, the comforting sounds of a world unaware of the horrors that lurk beneath its surface. To feel a human touch, to share a word with another soul, not bound by this terrible purpose. But the thought is fleeting, a wisp of smoke in a hurricane, extinguished by the cold, crushing reality of my situation. There is no escape. Not truly. Once you are chosen, once you have heard the whispers, once you have gazed into the abyss gazes back, and it never lets go. My essence is intertwined with this place, with this purpose, with the very fabric of this subterranean existence. I'm as much a part of the mechanism as the ancient stone walls, as the glowing chains, as the question itself, a component in a cosmic engine beyond my comprehension, irrevocably bound to its function until I, too, am consumed. The idea of freedom, of a life beyond these walls, is a cruel phantom limb, an ache for something that no longer exists for me. I am not sure if I still possess a soul in the conventional sense, the right of dissolution, the constant exposure to raw evil, the channeling of alien power. It changes you. Fundamentally and irrevocably. It scours you clean of what makes you human, stripping away empathy, attachment, individuality, leaving behind only the necessary components for the task, a terrifying efficiency, a cold, calculating function. I am a finely tuned instrument, a tool honed to a terrifying precision, sharp and unyielding, capable of wielding forces that would tear apart the unprepared. And the more precise I become, the less human I feel, the further I drift from the shores of my own identity, becoming a stranger to myself, a ghost in my own shell. My memories of a life before this place are like faint, flickering embers, barely holding onto their warmth, their details dissolving into an indistinct blur, like dreams from another lifetime, another person. There are faces I can no longer recall, names that slip from my grasp, emotions that feel alien and distant, memories of sunlight and laughter that might as well belong to another species. The elders watch, always. Their silent, cowled presence is a constant reminder of my inescapable destiny, a living prophecy of my ultimate fate, a mirror of what I will become. They are old, ancient, beyond reckoning, their eyes probably holding the wisdom of countless millennia of this grotesque custodianship, their spirits perhaps long since transcended human form, becoming something else entirely, beings of pure, distilled purpose. They never offer comfort, never offer reassurance, never offer a single word of empathy, only directives and the occasional ritual of purification to keep the instrument functional, to maintain its edge, to sharpen its terrible purpose. Their faith, if it still exists, is a cold and terrifying thing, stripped of all warmth, all mercy, all illusion. It is a faith in the necessity of a horrifying truth, a devotion to the preservation of a fragile, terrifying balance, a belief that the only way forward is to continue this endless, brutal work, to fight the inevitable with an unwavering, desperate tenacity. They are the ultimate pragmatists, having long ago sacrificed hope for the sake of delaying utter annihilation. My hands, even through the heavy gloves that are now a second skin, often feel cold, numb, as if the blood within them has ceased to flow, replaced by some sluggish ichor, a distant echo of the entities I touch. My voice, even when not channeling the question, has taken on a deeper, more resonant quality, a subtle echo of the ancient power that flows through me, a faint, disquieting hum that vibrates beneath my words, a reminder of the cosmic energies I wield. My mind, even in its quietest moments, is never truly silent. There are always the whispers, the echoes of forgotten blasphemies, the faint, distant hum of cosmic indifference, a silent choir of dread that accompanies my every thought, a pervasive background noise of the abyss. They are a constant companion, a testament to the fact that something of what I interrogate always remains, always leaves its indelible mark, a psychic residue that clings to my very being, becoming part of who I am, slowly, irrevocably, transforming me into something less and more than human. I sometimes trace the patterns on my cowl, the raised embroidery of protection sigils, feeling the rough texture beneath my fingertips, the intricate silver threads. It is my only link to who I once was, or rather, who I was told I must become. A nameless, faceless servant in an eternal war, fighting not for victory, for such a concept is meaningless in this struggle, but for mere containment, for the indefinite postponement of an inevitable oblivion. My purpose is not to defeat evil, for it cannot be defeated, only understood and temporarily bound. My purpose is to understand it, to catalog it, to keep it locked away for just one more day, one more year, one more century, until the grand, horrifying mechanism of the cosmos inevitably reaches its final, devastating conclusion, and all returns to the undifferentiated chaos from which it sprang. And they still make me ask the question, again and again, until there is nothing left to ask, or until there is no one left to answer.